everybody. Today, Camila Alves McConaughey is on the show today, and we're talking about her new children's book where she is teaching parents how to eat healthier and kids alike.
Maybe we should say that the kids are teaching the parents how to do better.
Did I say it backwards?
No, you're good. I was just messing with you.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I might have said it wrong. So yes, kids are teaching the parents because sometimes the kids can be the teachers. And we're talking diabetes, we're talking life and so much more. You don't want to miss it.
Man, you put me on the spot there.
Proposals and how similar Camila and I are with our proposal situations. For fun, you can go YouTube Howard Stern Show and see it.
I have never had this conversation before. Like, you're the only one that asked me this question to have this conversation about this.
I love it. Well, you guys don't want to miss it. Hit subscribe. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Better Together. When you know better, you get better. That's what we do here every single day. Our quote of the day is from a Greek, Hippocrates.
I like how you said that better. Much more fun.
Let food be thy medicine shall be thy food. It's one of my favorite quotes.
It's a good one.
What's up, Heal Squad? Welcome back. Today we are chatting with Camila Alves McConaughey about her new children's book, Just Try One Bite. So the connection to Hippocrates is right there because she is teaching parents through the children about food and how to eat healthier and make better choices, right? We're talking about her personal relationship with food, how she got to her healthy place, and so much more. We pre-taped this interview. We had a really amazing conversation with her. I've always loved her whenever I've seen her out and about. She's always so lovely and so sweet and attentive in the middle of chaos of like the Oscars or whatever. I didn't ask her if she was going to be at the Oscars this year. I bet they will be.
Probably.
I think they're going to pull out all the stops. But I mean, the Oscars. We need ratings. Anyhow, she is very, very into healthy eating and spreading that message, whether it's through her website, Women of Today, or obviously this book. And we had the coolest conversation. It's so funny. I just love seeing where it goes. And at the end, I remembered I wanted to ask her about whether he was running for governor. Like there were so many starred questions on here that I was like, I really want to know this and I really want to know that, but I forgot to get to any of it because I was just going with the flow. But the flow is where all the great stuff come. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I didn't know if we were going to get into, like, there are things that I'm curious about when I do these interviews, but I don't know if we're ever going to get there. But if it naturally goes there, then I will. And I love hearing her engagement story. And I laughed because in the middle of it, I realized, oh, we have such a similar, interesting kind of moment because I don't know a lot of people that jump the opposite way of the person who's proposing to them unless they really don't like them.
Right. It was more just, well, it's funny from the get, you guys were like very, bonded over from starting with the type 1 diabetic, like, and being with you that year and living with you, I saw everything you had to deal with. So for me, listening to her, I'm like, damn, like it mirrors so much. And I've never heard you be able to share that or like share that similar experience with someone, So that was cool. So from the get, you guys were bonded and then it just kept going and going and going. So I really, really enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, she's fun. But yeah, it's interesting when you have someone you love who has diabetes and that whole journey is a lot. I didn't know we were going into that. But we went into a lot of different places and I think you guys are going to really enjoy this conversation. Camila Alves McConaughey, here we go. Look, Just Try One Bite. I was assuming it was going to be the parents talking to the kids to try to get them to eat their vegetables. And I was wildly surprised to see the kids are actually educating the parents. But what's funny about that, Camila, is I feel like so often it's the kids trying to teach the parents. They're learning stuff at school. They're coming home. Like my generation or our generation, we were like coming home and telling our parents, don't smoke. It kills. It's bad. And and different things. So it makes sense. And it was so cute and so funny. And I loved it.
I am so happy to hear that. Wait, are we on right now?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
We are. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
I figure we just get to
it. No, thank you for taking the time to read it. You know, you're so right about the kids teaching the parents. I mean, I know my kids taught me so much, right? They have influenced me in so much. I mean, look, I used to hide candy and chocolate up in my closet where they couldn't get to, and they caught me, right? They called me one time and they set me down and it's like, what are you doing? Like, this is out of control. We give you the time of the month and you go, binge on sweets or whatever. And I was like, you know what? You guys are right. I'm not practicing what I preach to you guys, right? Like, and I still have my chocolate, but, I found this vegan chocolate. It's better for you, easier to, whatever. So you're right. Kids do influence and teach us so much. But I also feel that in this topic, it is so much guilt to families, parents, families, about you have to do the right thing. You have to be perfect. You have to do this way or that way. And I thought that this book, the way that we put it together, is just in a fun way, taking that guilt out of like, hey, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to, stress out about it. Just create a balance, just have the conversation. I think the biggest thing is really having the conversation.
Yeah. And just to do better. And I do think it was funny and that releases a lot of the kind of defense mechanisms, right?
It really does. I mean, what other kids' book that you have a kid going to the parent, a kid reading to the parent going, in your face, mom and dad, right? You don't really get to do that much, right?
Yeah. But you grew up eating healthy, right? Like, I imagine in Brazil, you guys ate healthy.
So this is the thing. I come from a family of farmers, right? My dad is a farmer into today. We have a farm together in Brazil, all of that. So the relationship with food and where food came from and what it took to get, food on the table and all of that, super strong, like extremely strong and very clear to me growing up. But I'll tell you what, we never had the conversation about sugar in our household. So sugar was like free for all. Like, I grew up having so much sugar. And guess what I struggle with into today? Sugar.
Really?
That's my biggest struggle. And I see my husband, who he had that conversation growing up. His mom was very more strict on that and had that conversation. And he can sit at a table, dessert table, have a little bit, and be like, I'm good, I'm satisfied. And I'm like, how do you do that? Right. So I think that, understanding the relationship between food and your body and what it does and what's good for you and not, it's extremely important. And the earlier you start, like if you start having that conversation with your kids, with your cousin, with your brother and sister, when they're little, you most likely are setting them up for a lifelong of good habits if you start early, right? If you don't, they're going to be struggling at some point with it. They're going to find out. We all find out at some point, oh, I shouldn't be having this. I shouldn't be having that. How many moments in your life as an adult or, in your late teens, early 20s, you went, if I only knew that, how come did I not know that? I've been doing this for so long and it's not good for me.
Yeah. Well, and the American diet is so different, right? Like, my parents are from Greece and, we were raised in, just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, but they had their own garden and we ate from the garden. And I watched my parents have like such extreme pride over like how big their zucchinis were and how red their tomatoes were. And oh my God, look at how big they are. And so we grew up eating really healthy. Even in the supermarket, I remember we would grab like green beans and eat them raw like that, and the carriage. And my dad was type 1 diabetic. So I would have thought that sugar would have been such a big no-no in my house, but I think my mom was so busy trying to keep him alive that it was less about like what we should or shouldn't have. The house was never stocked with anything unhealthy, outside of, maybe some soda for my dad, like a diet soda. But when we had parties and the ice cream came and the chips came, I used to snatch it and go to the attic and hoard it with my cousins. I would be like, oh yeah. I was like, finally we have good stuff, because my friends, you'd go to their houses and they'd have freezers full of ice cream and all that stuff. We never had that in my house. So I was kind of a little repressed. And so when I went to college, I just went crazy. I gained the freshman 40, not 10, and had this whole experience only to come back to, my normal size and eat healthy again and try to get better and better with it. But it is right. If you have that foundation to start with, you know where to go back to.
Exactly. That is so important, because even in your example, like you're saying, like you went off of it, but you had a strong foundation. So you're like, oh, I know what it is. I went off of it. I know exactly what to go back to, right?
Yeah.
To find your way back to it. It's funny you say, I know you're from Greece. I follow your journey, on social and all of that. And Greece is one of my favorite places in the planet.
I was going to ask you, because I know you lived in Athens for a period of time too, right?
I've lived in Athens twice in my life, and I absolutely love. I still have friends there today from when I lived there when I was, 19 years old. Great friends, really great friends, and we'll go back. Now I go back with my whole family, and they, now they have families, and we all gather and spend a good amount of time together. And my brother has type 1 diabetes.
Does he really?
Yep. I grew up with him having type 1 diabetes, and it's been...
So you know the journey.
I know the journey.
It's tough.
Anybody listening that knows that journey too, it's not an easy one. Up until today, I mean, he's a grown man now, and he was just here visiting. And up until today, I'm still waking up when he's here. I still wake up in the middle of the night to go check on him.
Oh my gosh. That's a really interesting conversation, because I've never really had that in so long with people, or in all these years of having a dad with type 1 diabetes. I thought I was the only one, but my mom and I always had to be so in sync with him to make sure he was alive, right? Because the blood sugar drops. Do you guys have a CGM unit for him, a continuous glucose monitoring system?
So now we do, but as you know, for the longest time, that wasn't when he was growing up, that didn't exist. The pump and the sensor and all those things, that wasn't really around. And then when it came out, I mean, in us, I don't know with your dad being from Greece, but I know us being from Brazil, we couldn't get it in Brazil. So my brother had to come here. And then because he wasn't from here, then he couldn't get here. We had to get him to Panama to go get this thing and get the training and the pump.
Wow.
And it's a constant, thing. He came in and he was running out of sensors. And I'm like, what are you doing? He had few days without the sensors. Yep.
That's when I panic.
Yeah. I know. Me too. And literally I'm calling the company. I'm calling because he was getting a new pump. So it was a transition when he was here. And, I'm calling, he actually had an episode in the middle of the night. I went and checked on him and he was fine. And I went back to sleep and he had an episode. And, and when we call it a episode, how do you say in English? Hypoglycemic?
Yeah.
How do you say in English? Where, he basically, they start, shaking and.
He went too low.
Yeah. So, he kind of got all, once you have that, you're very woozy for a long time. And he had this appointment at 6 a.m. and he missed it. And I missed it. And then that day I was freaking out, calling, leaving a bunch of voice messages, trying to get over somebody, we need to reschedule this. He doesn't have any sensors. We need to do this training for the pump, this and that. But, he got it. But we had a conversation because he had those few days of, it's so hard. I don't think people sometimes really understand how hard it is to actually have that in your life.
Yeah.
You have to everything is a mathematic. equation, like constantly 24/7. And he was talking about like how he doesn't know if he could ever go back to a life without the pump.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely not. I mean, my dad, when we got him on the pump and the Dexcom unit for his CGM, our lives changed because we used to have to be so in tune and connected with my dad. I could be 3,000 miles away and I would know if his sugar was low. Wow. And I would just psychically kind of know, call my mom, and we would have to look for him, find him on the streets. I mean, we both were in tune. With the Dexcom now, we can actually breathe. I can check his blood sugar right now on my phone, and I have peace. But there is this thing with my dad, and I don't know if your brother still has this too. So my dad has always run his blood sugar very low. And so 60's normal for him, 50's normal for him. Most people at 40 are in the hospital. My dad, 40, he can still, be totally normal. And so he will let it run too low. And then the danger there is once in a while, it gets to that place where now they don't know what to do to fix it. And if they're alone, that's when you can lose them.
Yeah. Yeah, it is very true. And my brother has, and I don't know if your dad has this, but my brother, I'm not there yet where my brother's comfortable sharing his numbers. Like he's very like, I'm okay. Like, he's like, I'm a grown man, I'm fine.
Yep.
Right? And it's not my dad. Like I can't, force him. It's my brother, right? Yeah. I can't be like, you have to.
My dad has no choice. I go into the phone, he doesn't know what I'm doing, and I just share everything. I'm like, you have no choice, buddy.
Exactly. I can't do that with my brother, right? Yeah. He's just savvy. It's like, no, like, I'm fine. Like, I was like, okay, but you're not really fine. Like, I see you, like, and it makes it harder because I get to be the annoying sister that is constantly going, how's your level? Like, did you eat? Did you eat? Okay, we're going to like take the food, take this, take that. And he's, every so often when we were around each other for like, he's like, he blows up on me, and I have to just take it because I get it. I'm being the annoying one. But to your point, like growing up, we grew up, I just have vivid memories of, catching him in the bathroom in the middle of the night, almost going into a coma, right? Yep. Like, and running and having all of that. So you just don't want them to suffer and go through any of that.
I can't believe this is the first time I've had this conversation with someone where all these years of taking care of my dad and you now taking care of your brother too, to have that conversation where people understand those moments, right? Because the person with diabetes is very rarely normal, let's say. Their levels are always going to be maybe a little high, a little low. It's such an odd thing to keep in like a good balance. Like you can, but even your nightmares can run your blood sugar low. There's so many things that you can't even control environmentally.
So many things, your emotions.
Yeah. But for the caretaker, I've never had this discussion where someone else understands the pain of having to be on edge, worried all the time. Is the person I love going to be okay? And then when they're not, having to revive them. There's that whole process too. And calling that, what do you do? Call 911 first, or do you go get sugar? Are you jamming it in the side of their throat? Like the panic, the fear, all of that comes with it. It's a lot.
Yeah, I get emotional just thinking about it, because it is like, when you just say, do I run to do this? Do I run to do that?
Yeah.
Because it is like, look, I left home when I was 15. So really like he was doing, I was 13, 14 years old, and, finding him, and, you know how it is when you find them in that going through it, like, their teeth is locked. You have to push it open because you have to get that, the Coca-Cola in there. You have to get that sugar in there. And then as you're doing that, you're like, am I too late? Did I catch it on time? But I need to do this, but I need to call 911. Like,
I got to open the door for 911. I mean, we would just like unlock the door, run back, the panic. I knew the paramedics and the firefighters by name. They were at our house every week.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear.
So it was a lot. But
Yeah.
the flip side of it is, and I always say this because a lot of my younger cousins were diagnosed with it, is it does teach you the importance of diet and how to keep your diet in the best place it can be for your health. Because if we all ate like diabetics are supposed to eat, which is what you really are championing with, your website, Women of Today, or with this book, we would all be the healthiest people ever,
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I don't know. And we're sitting here talking. I'm going, maybe it is part of that inspired me to get on this journey that I, subconsciously I don't even realize is there.
Yeah, I'm sure, because they teach you, to keep your blood sugar levels high. Obviously, you don't want anything that's going to spike it, right?
Yeah.
And so you want to have protein, fiber, and carbs, and fat. You need to have all those things to be able to keep a healthy balance.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very, very true.
I love seeing your wheels spinning right now.
I know, right? I'm sorry. Yes.
There's nothing to be sorry about. There's a lot to think about. You're like, oh, maybe this is what's influenced me so much.
Right? But it's funny because you say you never had this conversation, and I haven't. I'm sitting here also thinking like I haven't had this conversation either. I don't have any friends. I don't know anybody else, honestly, that grew up dealing with that, with type 1. I know people that have type 2, but it's a very different relationship and how it all works. And my brother, and I think it's so vivid because my brother was just here visiting from Brazil and he was with me for a month.
Yeah.
And it was all of that like came back. Like,
and he didn't have his sensors. I mean, to me, I'll tell you, I have my 2 friends at Tandem and at Dexcom. AC, and Nico. And I'm like, guys, when my mom was sick, it was so excruciating trying to take care of her and him at the same time. So, and because he was so emotionally wrapped up in my mom dying, his supplies would become a nightmare and he wouldn't have his supplies. And all of a sudden, I'm out of sensors right now. And I'm like, Dad, it takes hours on the phone just to get somebody to answer it so we can get this to you. And so anyhow, I made my friends. God bless them.
You might need to share that information with me.
Yeah, I will. And Susan,
you might need to introduce me to your friends because that is the sensor and the pump that he has.
This is what I always say. Sometimes you have to tell people your story and ask, and you never know what's going to happen. So I remember this woman, Susan. I said, listen, my mom is really sick. She has a deadly disease. It is excruciating. I'm trying to work 50 full-time jobs, keep everything afloat, keep her alive. And then I've got my dad I'm trying to keep alive. And I can't keep up with the supplies and figuring it out. And sometimes it's last minute because he forgets and he's so stressed. I need help. And she was like, when you need help, just text me. This is just somebody I met on the phone. And she helped me so much. And then when she left, she connected me with someone else. And so I have my lines of communication with 2 people. So when I have an emergency, they have been there for me through this whole journey. And yes, I understand that it's probably a lot easier for someone like me. However, I do know that there are a lot of people with heart on the other side of the phone. If you tell them your story, you never know what they're going to do.
But you just touched on something so important, because I kind of experienced this a good amount where people just go, well, if I would share something that happened or a story that happened and people go, well, but look where you are in your life, look who you're married to, and I go, yeah, that does help open doors and communication with people. But if I don't do the right thing, those doors close right away. If I don't go about the right way, it doesn't get anywhere. Mm-hmm. And then I go, I did this before I ever was married to Matthew, before I ever had this, eyeballs on me that I had before. It's just the same fundamental that you are saying of like, you share your story because people forget sometimes that they're talking to another human being. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, even like, with writing the book, right? I had somebody saying the other day, oh, Matthew wrote a book and then he decided to write a book. I was like, no, I was writing this book way before Matthew. Like he decided to, like worked on his book. It just coming out later than his, or when I did, the different companies with the baby food and handbags, I'm like, Matthew doesn't know anybody in the food industry. He was an actor. Like I had to cold call facilities and companies and grocers and all that stuff. I had to cold call and make my way into those places. So I think that a lot of times people get, like stuck on this sense of like, well, I don't have the connection, or I don't know this person, or I don't know where to go. Most of the things I have accomplished in my life have been from cold calling people and apologizing to be start with. Asking friends of like, who do you know, asking strangers, like literally like I'll go, when I was doing the food company, like I'll go to the grocery store and I'll ask the manager and ask him, okay, who can you connect me with? Never met the person in my life and connected with these things with health and my brother and my family. It's always the same thing that you just share your story. And yes, you're going to get into people that will be like, sorry, or being rude or whatever it is. But a lot of times you get to people that go, you know what, I'm not supposed to do this, but come over here. Let me show you this. Or, you know what, let me help you with that or this and that. I had so many of those in my life.
Yeah.
So many.
Yeah. Well, you've had such an interesting journey because you came to this country to model. And I'm pretty sure I have this right. You started off as a housekeeper. I mean, you worked really hard to learn the language and to start from the bottom up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still learning. I'm still working on learning the language. I just found out a few months ago that when I was taking English class, they only taught me like a third of what I needed to know grammatically of English language. So I'm like, no wonder. I'm like, no shit. I malaprop all the time. I'm like, I did not have no idea.
God. Camila, do you know what I tell people all the time? I'm like, do not bring the grammar to me, because Greek was my first language. I had to learn English like you, but obviously younger than you probably. And so when it comes to grammar, I'm always like, I know I'm Greek. I don't know.
I'm like, But yes, I moved to the state when I was 15 years old. I came to visit my aunt who lived here at the time. And I got on the plane. I was with my mom and I got on the plane and we had a bit of a challenging life in Brazil. Not necessarily, I grew up in middle class and we never like felt, we always had what we needed. My mom actually worked really hard. And she did this crazy thing, which I highly don't recommend. I shouldn't say I highly don't recommend, because my brother and I actually became super responsible with money and dividing our blessings financially. But she would work and then she'd give like half of her salary to me, half the salary for my brother to like do things. It was just a weird thing. Like I will not do that. But somehow, like my brother and I are extremely responsible with financial stuff. But so she worked really hard. We never missed things. We knew our family was struggling. Like, we would get called up to the doctor, to the principal's office about, not the school not being paid or whatever. But they put us on a bus, private school in town and all those things. My friends used to take private planes to go to Disney World for the weekend. And my brother and I used to take 3 buses to get to school, but we were there and we were around a lot of those things. But I knew that I had to do something different with my life. I didn't know what it was. And I remember on that flight, I got on the plane with my mom, and before the flight took over, and I had 1 suitcase of clothes and I had a large suitcase of books for school. And I looked at my mom and I just said, Mom, I don't think I'm coming back. And she goes, I know you're not. And that was it. And we do not talk about it for the whole, we never talked about it again.
Wow.
And I came, it was supposed to be I didn't even see my parents are divorced. So I didn't even see my dad before I left, because it was like I was supposed to come for just 15 days and come back. And then my aunt took me to modeling agencies, and we got, I got representation, and I didn't go back to Brazil. I didn't see my dad for like 4 or 5 years.
Whoa.
And it was the weird thing, the way the immigration law worked then. Once you applied for this, you needed a special visa to work as a model. So as you're working for that, you couldn't leave the country, but you couldn't work as a model, but they would give you permission to work a certain amount of hours. Anyway, it's very complicated. But I didn't speak the language. I didn't know anybody yet besides my aunt and my uncle. They got into a divorce in the middle of all of it. So that became very, very messy. So I went from staying with, my uncle on a 3-floor house with multiple Porsches in the garage, having everything needed, to sleeping at somebody that we barely knew couch in a bad part of town, neighborhood in town, where the ice cream trucks are going around at midnight, with 2 huge dogs. Like, I used to sleep on a couch, a tube seat couch in her living room. And I was like, I need to provide for myself. My parents couldn't, they exchanged, the amount of dollar exchange and all of that. They couldn't provide for everything that I needed. So I'm like, I got to work. And I had never worked in my life. Again, growing up in Brazil, we were middle class, my parents kind of gave us everything. So I'm like, okay. And we grew up, again, in our culture, you have people working in your household too, cleaning, doing all that stuff. So I'm like, okay, I was like, I need to work. And I didn't speak the language. But my dad always told me this growing up, me and my brother, is like, you have to know how to take care of your house. You have to know how to take care of your things, because you can be a queen. What happened if the staff doesn't show up? What are you going to do? Mm-hmm. So even though we had people working in our household, we learned a lot and to do a lot of things. So I'm like, I know how to clean a house. So I'm like, I don't need English to do that. So I just got on the newspaper and, and found a job cleaning houses. And
you did that for a few years, right?
I did that for a few years. Yes. And, there was a joke, because I was dating somebody at the time who was a musician, actually, and he did really well for himself. And he'll come pick me up and clean the house. And he had a nicer car than the owners of the house I was cleaning for. And she pulled me aside one time and she's like, what are you doing? Like, and I'm like, well, but that's his accomplishment, not mine. Like, I don't take ownership for that, right? On my broken English, trying to say that. So I used to clean houses, I can go really long, so I'm going to try to make this shorter. But yes, I clean houses. I would do English classes at night, the free English classes that you can get at community colleges. And then as I started learning the English a bit more, then I went, well, what's next? It was always like, what's the next thing that I can get myself to do better for myself and for my family? So I was like, well, I can make a bit more money if I work on restaurants, but my English was not good enough. So I did hostess. And then I worked in this Mexican restaurant where the menu was just numbers. So it was just numbers, like number 1, number 2. So I'm like, great, I can do that. So I did that for a while. And then I continued doing English class. And then finally I had enough English to take more time working at the Mexican restaurant. And I went to quit to the Italian restaurant where I was doing the hostess job. And I remember like it was yesterday. And this was a very fundamental time for me. I remember going to this place and I had this old beat up car that didn't have, what is the thing like when your car is really hard to turn?
Oh, no automatic steering or yeah.
I mean, it was a workout. And then the car like caught on, it was smoking on the way. There was this whole thing. And I got there and I walked into the restaurant and the owner was they're from New York. And I walked into the restaurant, they were in a meeting, and the owner, he just knew how I walked, my body language. And he looked at me and he goes, can we cuss in here?
Sure.
He was like, don't you fucking come in here to tell me what you, and fucking sit down. And I was like, whoa, I had never, like, I didn't grow up like that. Even though I come from a trouble, my parents divorced and all, like, nobody had ever talked to me like that. And I was just like, and I sat there and I was just like, what just happened? And I was like, okay. So he finished the meeting. He walks to me like very like, pissed off. And he was just like, you're not quitting. And I'm like, well, I can make more money at this other place. And with my English, it's better there. And da-da-da. And he went, if Ruben can do it, why can't you? And he's like on my face, like, if Ruben can do it, why can't you? And I just remember it was that light bulb. And Ruben, to give you a little bit of the backstory, started working in his restaurant as a busboy. And his English was still very broken. But he worked his way up from a busboy to working in the kitchen, to become a waiter, to then become the manager, one of the managers, and one of the best managers at the restaurant. And his English was still broken. Like he still had a big accent and all of that. And in that moment, I was like, you know what? You're right. I said to him, you're right. And I said, I'll take the challenge, but, and this was also very fundamental for me, because it was one of the first times, again, coming from a different country, doing all those things. I remember every time that I had a problem with people putting me down or being rude or doing something with me, of being able to stand up for myself and put limitations on it, right? Like putting my boundaries. And I said, well, I'll take the challenge if you don't ever cuss me out like that again. Like I have, I can't, like, I don't come from that environment, like from that family. It's like, you can't cuss me out like that again. And if you have patience with me of, me learning. Listen, the first week as a waitress, it was so bad. It was literally like I would write things down, right? And run back and go, do we have OJ? Like, what's OJ? Do we have OJ?
Oh my God.
And the other waiters would look at him going, it's orange juice, Camila. Yes, we have it. It's right there. Like, it was to that level. But with I think within 2.5 months, I was like employee of the month. I was selling the most amount of specials, the most amount of the expensive wine and all of that. So that was really fundamental. And that place kind of became a bit of a family, that when I did get everything settled to start modeling, which it took about 4 years.
Wow. How old were you at that point?
19. So I did not start modeling until I was 19. But when I went to model, it was the sweetest thing. All the people, the regulars that will go to the restaurant, the people that work there, they all did this thing where they all had this pile of money they all put together to give it to me to go to New York for the first time. It was the sweetest thing.
No way. Oh my God, I want to cry.
Really sweet.
Wow. Wow, that's really special. You see, people are good. So you went and you modeled. It's funny. One of my favorite stories of you and Matthew is when he proposed to you. And I don't know how many people know this story, but I just love that you didn't accept right away. And I've never gotten to ask you, why did you not accept right away? And by the way, I think it's the most gangster move ever, because you have the power forever after that. Oh, I love it.
Oh my gosh. I don't think anybody ever asked me this question. I think it was, look, like I shared here, I come from, my growing up was a bit challenging in terms of my mom and dad, right? They got married and divorced to each other 2 times, but ended up divorced 2 or 3 times. And then Matthew's parents, the same thing, but they ended up together. We have the same number of splits in our family with our parents. And I always told my parents, I grew up always telling them, don't ever expect me to get married. Like, not doing it. Like, not doing it. Don't ever expect that. My, rebellious side on it too, what it's going through. And the most important thing for me was to have a happy and healthy household. That was my main focus. It's as long as I have a peaceful, happy, and healthy household and relationship, I'm good. Right. And I had so many people, I cannot tell you, I had so many people going, because I didn't come from, at modeling, like you're around a lot of people in the entertainment industry, but, I wasn't an actress. I wasn't, I was still shaping myself and what I was going to do in the world and all of that. And I had so many people telling me, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to, and it's a lot of gossip too that says that I give, Matthew the ultimatum, marry or not. Never done that. When he asked and proposed, it was just, I had such a fear. I had a oh shit, is it going to change everything that we have? And I had a terrified gut reaction, you know what I mean? I was like, no, we're good. You know what I mean? We're not doing this. And immediately I was like, this is my fear talking. This is not my enlightenment, my side that can evolve, right? That can let the fears of what has happened to me as a child, the fear of what happened to me as a teenager, the fear of, what's going to happen. So then I say yes after.
How long did it take?
But I don't remember. It wasn't long. He was still, he basically just, stood on his knees. He was like, I'm going to be here until you change your, until you change your answer.
What's funny is if you look up my engagement, which actually was today, this isn't airing today technically, but we got engaged on Howard Stern today, which is also the day of my parents' wedding. Kevin proposed to me. Now, we had been together for 20 years, and I was kind of like you, where I was like, maybe something's going to change. Everything's good. I don't need to mess with a good thing.
Yeah.
And also I have such needs for freedom that I was like, oh my God, I don't want anyone to own me. So I had all these weird things in my own head too. So he surprises me on Howard Stern and proposes. So Camila, he gets down on one knee, he opens this box, this light explodes, and I think it's a joke. First of all, I dive onto the other side of the couch away from him. I ran away and I was afraid and I was in shock. And I was looking at this thing, and as I'm processing, I go, oh my God, he's cracking a joke and the whole world's going to think he's the biggest asshole later. I don't know why I was thinking this was a joke. And Howard's having to say, Maria, this is when normal girls cry and say yes. And I'm like, So I didn't say yes right away either. It took a while. I had a lot to process myself. Oh man. Yeah.
It took me a minute too, but then we had the whole family around us,
Oh, he did it in front of everybody?
Yes, it was Christmas. Yes,
oh, wow. But I love it because I'm like, oh, gangster move. She's got the power for life. In fact, I don't know if you ever get to hear how he speaks of you. So I made sure the girls pulled up a clip of him on this show to share with you because I don't think you ever get to probably hear how he speaks of you. So let's see what he says here. I was getting the chills through the book because it is so hard to find someone who's going to soldier through with you in this world. And I give her so much credit because, it can't be easy to have to deal with 3 kids on your own and, doing all that and not having your partner. And so I thought she was such a gangster. I think she's so amazing.
Yeah, she is. And she's, it's an ability to, if I need something or if the kids need something, this family needs something, her ability to whatever she's doing, drop it and handle that. I don't know how she does it. But she has things going on in her own life, independent of me and the kids. She's building her own life. Boy, she will drop those things that I had to take care of the family. But it's an instinctual thing. Don't even think about it. There's no questions asked. Yeah. And it's so consistent. Yeah, it's quite amazing.
Aww.
Oh, you guys, you got me on that one.
That's a good one to pick, girls. I love it.
Oh, you got me on that one.
Aww.
Yeah, I think that, you know what? I think that when we, okay, I might need a second.
Aww.
I think that when we choose to go on a journey with somebody for life, in life, I think it's extremely important to understand, like, what do they really need? What's really important? What is really priority for you, for that person? And for me, I always say, for me, my family is priority. And my family started with Matthew. So for me, that's priority. And yeah, does it make life harder and more challenging? And all of those things? Sure, it does. But I wouldn't have any other way, because then I've always been that person that, if work is great, if I'm making money or all this and that, but my personal life is shit, I'm sad. I feel horrible. I can't find joy on what I do. I don't know why I'm like that, but I'm just wired that way. I'm wired to where.
I know why.
Why?
Because that was what your dream was to have a different scenario than what you had, right? Yeah. Family was your number one priority because it wasn't the way you wanted it, let's say, growing up, right? So now you were able to create what you wanted and you hold it so tight.
Yes, it is. But, also one thing I've been really kind of, my mother-in-law is 90 now. She's been living with us since, the pandemic started. I literally looked at Matthew. I was like, we're going to go. We're going to pick her up. She's coming here. And there was not a conversation about it. Like, wow. We would figure this out. Obviously we didn't think it was going to go for this long. We didn't think that she, but we always knew she was going to move in with us. We didn't know it was going to happen this early. But she's living with us, and it brings up a lot of things of the fact of, we work so hard, right? We want to have our mark in this world, and we want to, a legacy. What do we leave behind? What do we, how are people going to remember me, right, when I'm gone, and that kind of stuff. And the reality for me with kids is I'm like, man, my family and my kids is the biggest legacy that I can leave behind. All the knowledge that I have, if I can't pass that down and continue that going, then what it is that I'm really doing. So even with my work, it's what I'm trying to do with it with women of today. It's what I'm trying, even little projects, little projects that I do, or things like this book, just try one by. It's about how can I just pass down some form of knowledge or some form of things that, can leave that good presence. So for me, my family comes first. And if that is not well, you can tell anybody that's around me, like in a heartbeat, is like, oh, something's going on. Let's not, whatever. And that becomes priority to me. And I feel that a lot of people right now have this thing. And I put a post up a while ago about something with Matthew, and I wrote something about, like I'm behind the scenes, right? Like I'm behind him or something like, that old saying of
the man behind the woman.
The woman behind the man, right? I'm behind every
the woman behind the man, yeah.
It's a great woman, right? And I believe that's true. And I believe that people get cut up on, so many people are back, well, you're not behind him, you're beside him. And I'm like, not really. No. As supporters, sometimes you're behind, sometimes you're next to it, sometimes you're ahead.
And that's okay.
You know what I mean? And that's okay. And that's all right. So I think that, again, we started this talking about marriage and all those things. And I think that getting married, I do want to go back to that because I think it's an important point of people going, well, but you got married, right? And so, And I think that, when we got married, we did the whole process of going to the Catholic Church and doing the classes and all of that. I was terrified. I was terrified. I was for sure. I'm like, okay, after we do these classes, this intense, I'm like, I don't know if we'll make it past this. We'll probably can't signal this thing, And what I learned with that process was really that actually made us better, actually got us closer. And getting married did change a lot of things. It really did change a lot of things. And I think that for the better.
Yeah. I felt the same way.
You did too?
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, wow, I didn't know it could get better. That's so weird. A piece of paper is what you think it is, but it isn't. It's like a deepening of the bond. And it has to just be when you're ready. And that's that. Mm-hmm. But I remember now in that clip, I think what I was referencing was the fact that you told him to go be alone and write your book. And I was like, what a gangster. Like, she assumed all the duties, was like, I got it. You go do your thing. And I'm like, she's amazing. Like, I just think that it's very selfless, and he obviously very much appreciates that about you. And it inspired me to try to be more like that with my husband.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Although I kind of half-heartedly will tell him, go, honey, but don't. You can go, but please don't.
You have to know what your partner needs, right? Like, you have to know what they need. And I know that he need, and we've had that multiple times. Like, when he was, we went through a stage where we didn't come home. Like, we were on the road for so much with the kids, with the dog. Like, I mean, it was crazy. We would be gone all year and just come home for Christmas and leave again and be on the road. And, we had that moment where he was like, well, I have this project and that project and that project, and I don't know, how am I going to be able to do this? And I was just like, do you want to do them? Like, is it important? Right. And then we had that conversation. I'm like, so grab your balls and do it. I got you, go, we'll figure out on the way. Come on, and he did, and he did all this amazing work. He went into Dallas, but I was like, I mean, it was a chance. So we have had multiple times in a relationship that we have that, but I think that it's not unique to our relationship. I think it's unique to anybody that is in tune with what their partner needs.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And being able to be not selfish, which is a hard thing for me to be selfish, but yeah.
It's a really beautiful quality. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, you got to find the balance. Sometimes you got to put your foot down on what you need.
I have an idea for you, and I don't know if you've done this yet, because I was looking at Women of Today, and it was amazing. And by the way, I'm going to make all the recipes, especially the nachos. I was very excited about the nachos, and my husband loves nachos. I wonder if you don't share your caretaking journey.
That's interesting.
Right? Women of Today, there are so many women in this country. I mean, primarily the women are the caretakers in families, and it's a burden that you take on, right? It's something that you choose to take on most of the time. Or sometimes it falls on the women because the boys in the family don't want to do it. But I think it's a really important journey, and it might be something that you can chronicle for your site.
That's interesting. How we do it though?
I don't know. I see video diaries with your mother-in-law about what it was like for her when you were like, let's go, come over, the whole journey. I don't know where she's at with her health, but what it's been like for her, what it's been like for you guys, what it's been like for Matthew. I think that would be, even if it's like a little 10-minute video or even 5-minute video of just you guys chatting, but then maybe a little, I think there are a lot of people that need that comfort of knowing that they're not alone in this journey. I talk about it here a lot because I took care of my mom as well. But I don't think enough people can talk about it.
It's very true. That's a great idea. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to put some thought on how to go about it. We've shared the, a little bit of the journey with my mother-in-law more in a fun way. But that's a really good point, because it does, a lot of us go through it and we just don't talk about it, as you say. We don't talk about it. And a lot of times we don't realize how much of pressure, or how much, responsibility to be responsible for somebody else's life. It's whatever stage that is. It's definitely, because you're not just responsible for them health-wise. You're like, well, you want to make sure they were happy.
Yep.
Are they engaged enough? Are they, having enough stimulation? Shoot, I had to, start doing my mother-in-law toenails every weekend, because, made her happy. And it's like, you look at mine, they're a mess, but hers look really good.
Yeah. But just sharing that story, I think is really cool, because I think, you're sharing all these different journeys on there. And I think that's a really important one.
Yeah, it's a really good point, because, a lot of women of today, the main goal in there is that we learn from each other, right? When I started, I had so many people say, it has to be your name. It has to be a certain age group. It has to be this. And then, what's the business plan? And I say, I don't have a business plan. And no, if you want to come in to invest and then I have to just talk to one age group, we're not doing this. My goal is that we can learn from each other at different stages of our lives, being younger, older, no matter your color of skin, or your background, what country you're from. And we can learn from each other on how to do better. Again, it's not about being perfect. It's just about doing better. Because if we do better in all aspects of life, if we stop and go, how can I do better with my food? How can I do better with my health? How can I do better with my mood? How can I do better in how I have conversations with my friends, or listen, or whatever that is, right? If you can just practice doing better consistently, that's where the big change comes.
Yep.
That's when, you really notice of going, wow, my life just took a 360. And where did it come from? You're like, oh, I've been doing this consistently for a long period of time. And we have so many women. We have men as well, but we are majority women in the community. And we have had so many women share how much they have changed. So that's kind of keeps us doing what we're doing there. It is food heavy, because that's what they ask. So the content that you see on the website, Women of Today, it's really things that people are asking us, right, to do. So they ask for a lot of food, because I think that everybody struggles with food. I always envy, like, when I see friends or people that like just have it perfectly down and do that. I'm always sitting there and going, how do you do it? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it is all about that. And I think this journey that you mentioned, this idea, it is an important one. I'll get my brain thinking on how to do this. Yeah.
And we're better together, all ages, all races. That's what we talk about. And we all learn from each other. So I think, it's always, everyone's journey is a little bit different, or there's some nugget you're going to get from someone that you might not get from the other. And so I think that it would be really cool to see that.
And we go into different stages of our lives, right? And I think that sometimes when you're young, you don't give as much value to that, because you're young. You're like, you're going through life a million, miles an hour. And as you get older, you start going, man, like, it's so many stages in life that we change. And if we just have a broader conversation about those stages of life, it might make it easier for all of us. You know what I mean? It's just my will. And, we just had in the beginning of the year, I haven't shared this with anybody, but we just had our meeting where we look at all the numbers, look at all the, the report, right? The yearly report and of Women of Today. And the page that made me the happiest, I literally put it on my wall, was how diverse we are from ethnicity in age group. And right, I literally started screaming on the phone call going, see, we did it. I'm like, that's what we wanted from day one, because we have people working with us since, the beginning of this. People left, came back, and they're like, yes, you talked about this since day one. And I was like, yes, we're doing it. Like it's there. Like it's happening.
Yeah.
It just warms my heart, makes me so happy to see it.
I love it. Well, you're doing great work with the book, Just Try One Bite. Which is going to just teach everybody. It'll reinforce it in the kids, but it'll remind the parents that the bag of Cheetos in the car, maybe not the best lunch for you.
Look at this illustration, guys. It's just so cute.
The parents' faces in it are everything. They're so shamed and embarrassed at first and just like, stay away. It's like, they're just giant little kids, which is hilarious.
I mean, it's amazing. The illustration, he did so well, Michael Bolt. Mike Bolt. And, look, if you told me a few years ago that I would have a kid's book, I'll be like, you're out of your mind. It's never been on my, plans to have a kid's book. But I think there are many different ways that we can have this conversation of doing better. Mm-hmm. It's so good. And this is a bit of a rap, not preachy way of getting the conversation going in the household.
Yeah, I agree. Just Try One Bite is the book, everybody. We will put a link to it in the summary of this episode. Well, hopefully this is the first of many conversations. And I think you're great as always. I've always loved seeing you out and about. You're always as gorgeous on the outside and inside as well. Or as gorgeous on the outside and inside. You know what I'm saying. You're gorgeous inside and out. And you're always so lovely to see. And so everybody, the website is womenoftoday.com. We will put a link to that in the summary as well. And anytime you want to come back, please do. This is such a great conversation. I feel so less alone in the diabetes world now too. All right, queens.
I love her, and she made me want to get my eyebrows done because her eyebrows are perfect.
Your eyebrows are perfect
well,
too,
thank
Kelsey.
No, hers are like, she's just...
What more perfect do you need?
Well, I don't know. Hers were just so good. She's just so, like, you said it, but like inside and out, she's just such a stunning person.
Yeah. You know what I didn't go into, because we just were running out of time, was how good she is with her boundaries.
Right?
And I was like, damn, we're so out of time, but I just love that.
We need to have her back.
Yeah, I think Brazilian women are just naturally good at it. That's just going to be my thought.
Well, my
very
aunt...
stereotype where it's like everybody from Brazil is good at it, but I just know a lot of different Brazilian people who are just really good with being firm, fair.
I think they're raised a little differently because my aunt's Brazilian and she's the same way. Mm-hmm. She lays the law down, and I'm like, damn, okay, cool, go girl, go off, Stella. But yeah, I just think, but even at the end when she was saying, she was like, well, I'm not selfish, and you're like, that's a beautiful quality, and she's like, oh yeah, but I could be a little more. It's interesting to kind of see that's where maybe what she thinks her fault is, because it's like everything else. It's like, oh my God, you're such like a pure, beautiful person. And she's like, yeah, okay, well, I'm not taking care of myself. I'd be interested to go into that realm with her too.
Yeah. Well, maybe next time. I think, listen, when you're giving, and a lot of moms do this, they're giving to everybody.
Right.
She took on her mother-in-law. She is 100% behind her husband, Matthew, and the kids. Mm-hmm. And then she's like eking out her areas for herself.
Right.
That's when you're like, well, maybe there should be more for me. Mm-hmm. Right. So maybe she's in that place where it's like, oh, is there a balance here that we could find? But it was interesting. She had said something. I couldn't remember exactly what she had said about when her dream of like what her family was going to be like. And then when she said, I don't know why I'm like this. I'm like, oh no, I totally know. It's because that's what you always wanted. But I couldn't remember the exact thing she had said or how she had phrased it.
I have to pull it up because it's in a...
She's more excited about having a peaceful life and a peaceful home.
A peaceful life and a peaceful home.
Yes, that's what it was. And I couldn't remember exactly what it was, but I know that that's what she wanted and that's what she is behind. And I also loved her description about being behind Matthew and how that's okay. Because everybody doesn't have to have the same definition of what your position is. Like, I know we're all fighting for equal rights and all of that, and we should be beside. But for her, she's okay being behind him.
Right.
And that's okay.
Right.
And nobody should come down on her for that.
Well, and I think too, like, as you could see in the clip that we played, he's so behind her too, so it's that give and take that she was talking about.
And how about her? Like,
I know.
I thought about it yesterday. I was like, Kelsey, let's pull a clip of him saying something about her, because when you're the one behind the person, we can say all we want. I can say all I want. Kevin's amazing. He does so much for me or whatever. Nobody ever pays attention. No one cares. And he never gets to hear me say that necessarily unless he's following every interview I do, which is kind of impossible.
Right.
So I thought about it yesterday, and that's why I said, pull a clip so she can hear how he talks about her and how he thinks and feels about her. Not that he doesn't say it to her, but it also feels a little differently, and it got her so emotional. I thought that was cute.
I know. But you can tell it really is. It's that give and take. And I don't think she would be as behind him as she is if he wasn't as supportive of her as he is,
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Really, really cool. I love her.
Yeah. I really want her to come back and hang out again, because I love you guys together. I love your chemistry. I thought that was a really great episode.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Pooja hated it.
Pooja loved it.
Yeah, I thought it was so bad. No, I thought it was so cute. I liked when she was saying how even though we're all in different stages of life, like as women, we can really learn from each other. Like, and I think that's so important, especially like being a young person, like the youngest one on the team, and like on the show, like this might not be something I necessarily would watch, but now I'm like telling all my friends, I'm like, you guys, like, when I know they have like an issue, I'm like, watch this episode. Like, I'm telling you, like, or even if they don't, I'm like, this will help us later on, like, not have these problems.
Yeah.
So I thought it was beautiful that she's kind of she's doing the same thing, in her way. And I think we need more content and more stuff like that out there.
Yeah. I was telling Kelsey yesterday, I'm like, this show doesn't exist really. And because we also cover a broad range of things. And I say the same thing. I'm like, we're all on this journey to get better, and we are better together, and we're learning from each other. We're learning from our guests. We're learning from our experts. And so, I'm really glad that you feel that way, Pooj.
Thanks.
And that you're sharing it with all the young people who, my goal is to not have you guys have to wait till you're in your 40s to figure some of this stuff out. Like, why not learn it now?
Why not?
Yeah, right?
Well, and I think it's cool, and I've told you this, Maria, but I think it's cool and it's amazing that you're talking about it, that she's talking about it, because it's like you guys are just pulling your audiences. I mean, I had a friend text me during the show that said, did I have a dream, or was Ludacris actually on your show? And I was like, no, that was real. And she's like, oh, I can't wait to watch it. So it's those people that are coming on that are bringing new audiences like you. You're bringing, people know you for one thing, and now they're like, oh my God, Maria's talking about mental health and anxiety. And yes. So we're just like continuously growing and getting better. And I think it's so cool.
Yeah. And our show is growing. I mean, I think we've grown like maybe almost 40%.
Yeah.
In the last couple of months. So that's been really cool. So we growing.
Thanks to you guys.
We getting better. So thank you guys. If you have any thoughts on today's show, anything that you loved, comment. If you're watching on YouTube, comment below and let us know what you loved. Let us know what you want more of. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any other audio device, thanks for being with us. Leave us a review if you would. We love reviews. They are like our chocolate.
Bread and butter.
Chocolate.
Chocolate. I like chocolate better too.
Yeah. And we're really grateful for all of it. And MariaMenounos.com for the cliff notes of all of these episodes and so much more. Love you all. Be nice people. Make good choices and be present.